In GTA San Andreas, there's a mission called Body Harvest. Did you know that this is a reference to the game that formed the blueprints to GTA? It was the first game built on the GTA engine and was so controversial, Nintendo tried to cancel it. This is the story of Body Harvest, the N64 game that inspired Grand Theft Auto. Released on October 20th, 1998, Body Harvest is a sandbox 3D shooter that lets you take on an invading army of space bugs across multiple time zones. Made by DMA Design based in Dundee, Scotland, this is the studio that eventually became Rockstar. At the time, DMA were best known for games like Hired Guns, Uni-Rally, Shadow of the Beast, Ballistics, Blood Money, Menace, Barbarian 2, Cosmic Pirate, Voodoo Nightmare, Operation Harrier, and of course, Lemmings. It was Body Harvest though that had the biggest impact, going on to change not just video games, but culture itself. According to former DMA Design staffer Steve Hammond, Body Harvest's formal inception dates back to the 17th of November 1994. Conceived as a B-movie style game, writes Hammond, Body Harvest was a classic sci-fi alien invasion flick. Every couple of dozen years, a wave of bug-like monsters would descend on the Earth and start chomping down on the humans. Tonally, we wanted to make it feel like the low-budget flick Tremors. The original design document also referenced them, Invaders from Mars, The Blob, also Logan's Run, A Clockwork Orange, Buckaroo Banzai, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers. With the design laid out, Body Harvest needed funding. This is where DMA turned to Nintendo to get them on board. The Scottish developers had a trick up their sleeves to do so by showing them something they didn't think was possible on a SNES cartridge. Nintendo had at the time seemingly believed that FMV playback from a SNES cartridge wasn't possible. DMA proved them wrong by managing to cram a clip from Star Wars onto the tiny cartridge. With that, Nintendo signed DMA to make Body Harvest. At this point, the N64 was called Project Reality, before it morphed into the Ultra 64 and then N64. The door was now open to writing for more powerful hardware than DMA had ever seen before. DMA was asked to come up with a range of ideas that would really flex the power of the N64. At the time, they had a top-down vehicle-focused game which they were developing a year earlier, which was the very first GTA. However, the worry was that US audiences just wouldn't be into playing a 2D game. This is when Mike Daly, one of the first developers hired at DMA, spearheaded the creation of the engine which would form the bedrock of Grand Theft Auto 3. It had everything GTA 3 would go on to have: a huge sandbox, dozens of vehicles to steal, and of course, glorious violence. Body Harvest was very much the original vehicle-based 3D open world game. You walk around on foot, enter buildings, talk to NPCs, blow up blocked passages with dynamite, and most importantly, commandeer vehicles to cause mayhem with, all with their unique handling and abilities. The massive fleet of fully stealable vehicles are what sets Body Harvest apart. It's vehicle stealing across land, sea and air 3 years before GTA 3. You have saloon cars, motorbikes, military RVs, and even tanks. You don't get just skin swaps of the same sort of car, you get full vehicles with their own handling. Like GTA, each one has a name which pops up at the bottom of the screen when you enter. Here we have a Humvee type vehicle called the Bulldog, which is also the name of a sports car in GTA 1. And check out this vehicle called Nico's Supplies. Nico, of course, being the protagonist of GTA 4. Almost certainly coincidences, but fun nonetheless. DMA studio head David Jones explained the game's direction to IGN in an interview in 1997. "I hate linear gameplay," he says. "To me, the ultimate game would take real-world physics, model them perfectly, give them an open environment, let them go, then just play around with the laws of physics. That's what games are." Body Harvest splits its open world into different zones: Greece, Java, America, Siberia, and the alien homeworld. This here is the Greece zone, and the premise of the game is this. Two soldiers, Adam Drake and Daisy, are sent out in a recently invented time machine. This is called the Alpha Command module, and the mission is to go back into the past and wipe out the earlier invasions, saving humanity from its doomed fate. The aliens first arrived in 1916 and returned every 25 years to harvest more food, hence the name of the game. So Adam visits Greece in 1916, Java in 1941, the southwestern United States in 1966, and Russia in 1991. So this is Adam Drake. He's a mostly silent soldier wearing a bright orange combat suit and carrying a range of weapons. You start with a pistol and you can upgrade this by finding a machine gun, a shotgun, dynamite, and so on. Even though his futuristic armor stands out across different time periods, most NPCs actually completely fail to recognize this and comment on it as if it's a completely normal look. Daisy is Adam's partner and main support contact. You can press the left shoulder button to whip out your PDA and ask her for mission tips. She spends most of the game inside the Alpha Command module, warning about alien threats and offering guidance on what to do next. Marketing images show Daisy holding a rifle, suggesting she may have once been a playable character, maybe in a sort of co-op feature. There are no sections with her in the game outside of the command module though. The game also introduces an enemy clone created using Adam's own blood. You can see a little hint of this in the opening cutscene where the aliens harvest a drop of his blood, and this gets paid back later where you encounter a clone of yourself. Now, moment to moment in Body Harvest, there are side missions in each environment. Essentially, this is a game about finding an area of interest on the map screen, then speeding your way there to deal with it. And you have complete free choice with how to get there and what route. This was huge at the time. Open world games just were rarely a thing. For instance, early in Greece, alien attacks set part of the town on fire, and you must travel there, take a fire engine, and put out the flames within a strict time limit. You can actually shoot water out of the nozzle to douse the fire, which was a pretty novel effect at the time. Like GTA, when Adam is inside of a vehicle, he will not take any damage from the alien hordes. The car has its own life bar, and once empty, it will explode. Another future feature from GTA, you can shoot some of your weapons from the driving seat, being able to actually do drive-bys on aliens. Some of the vehicles even have their own special weapons to use, like the explosive turret on the tank. There are also plenty of interior sections, an impressive amount of them. You can head inside any building which has a door and interact with things inside. You can turn off candles, drink from barrels of water to regain health, find keys, and read from bookshelves for hints at how to progress. It's almost like an early form of RPG and is a bit of a tonal shift from all of the blowing things up. And in fact, when you enter any building, the world outside freezes, then resumes again when you exit. Here, I find a town guide that says the town planted trees to block youths from jumping over a gap, so civilian vehicles cannot get through. Non-civilian vehicles, however, very much can, and this is how you bypass this particular shortcut. Here in this church, I find a religious text that details a plague that happens every 25 years. So it's a bit of a nod to the actual main story of the game. And in the military base, I find a machine gun. One interesting detail is that the base is called Mackenzie Base. This is named after a guy called Jonathan Mackenzie. In Body Harvest, according to this Greek journal of war, there were many heroes during the Great War, none braver than the Honourable Jonathan Mackenzie, first to approve the use of the tank. Now, there is a place in GTA 5 called Mackenzie Field Hangar, which suggests to me GTA was making a reference to Body Harvest. However, we actually have no idea who Jonathan McKenzie is. He's not listed in the credits for Body Harvest, so apparently he didn't work on the game, but one thing's for sure, Jonathan McKenzie is a suspiciously Scottish name for a guy that supposedly lived in Greece. Anyway, onto the sound, and the sound for the time was incredible. Here's a little blast of it. The Body Harvest devs had 2 full-time composers, 2 audio programmers, and 2 sound engineers at a time when most developers barely had a single dedicated sound guy. This was due to the technological limitations of the time. When the N64 came out, a lot of developers immediately decided that it couldn't do proper audio since it didn't have a CD player. This is where these developers took shortcuts. But DMA, on the other hand, designed the audio in Body Harvest right from the start. It was immediately obvious to the DMA devs that the N64 could be used to implement a dynamic music system. Its audio programmers worked with the team to create the engine, while the composers started trying different styles of music. In an interview given in 1998 for Prima's official strategy guide, which was written by Simon Hill, an unnamed DMA dev explains the style for Body Harvest's music. Quote, "We settled on the dark, brooding style because it was so effective at manipulating the player's emotions. After you have played the game for a while, you start to use the soundtrack to tell you what's going on. If the music changes to a faster, more frantic pace, you just know that something big and slimy is about to charge you, guns blazing." While the music's great, there is one thing lacking in the audio, that is speech. Speech was considered at one point, but even CD-based systems would have struggled with the amount of dialogue Body Harvest had. It results in strangely mute cutscenes. The large amount of dialogue and the more RPG-like interior sections is where you can really start to see the influence of Nintendo. Nintendo, says Hammond, wanted the game's story to be more complicated. Tonally, they didn't like the simplistic, tongue-in-cheek B-movie concept. The tagline Hammond originally came up with was, "They came to meet us, greet us, and eat us." But Nintendo wanted something edgier. This was an attitude exemplified by the Play It Loud campaign. The family-friendly company famous for Mario and Donkey Kong wanted to push into an older demographic like Sega was doing with the likes of Sonic and Virtua Fighter. It's weird to think now, but at this time, it was Nintendo who was encouraging the makers of Grand Theft Auto to get a bit more grown up, not the other way around. Where DMA wanted Tremors, Nintendo wanted Terminator. DMA listened and put 2 years of work into their budding action game. They then showed off their progress to Nintendo. Unfortunately for DMA, Nintendo was not happy with the way the game was being handled. They sent out several Nintendo staff members, including one producer of the Zelda 64 project, which of course later became The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. For a time, they worked together with DMA in their Dundee offices. Nintendo wanted to turn Body Harvest into a fully fledged RPG. The reason for this was the N64 didn't have that many RPGs at the time, if any, and that is considered to now be a major reason the console had kind of a lukewarm reception in Japan. Nintendo had just lost the Final Fantasy series to PlayStation, and players in the mood for RPG experiences were left cold in the early years of the N64. DMA apprehensively agreed to it, but the vibe was off. This wasn't the game Body Harvest was meant to be. In April 1997, a year before Body Harvest came out, DMA Design's head, David Jones, described where the current relationship with Nintendo was at. Quote, "It's a very hard relationship because their quality is so high that it's so hard to match the quality of the products they do. And they really want you to focus on making Nintendo products. It's very hard to write games that you're not writing for yourself, which is traditionally what I've done. And basically we just have to listen to them because we're not as good as they are. Nobody in the world is as good as they are, so we'd be daft to try and say we think you're wrong. So we just have to work with them and we implement everything that they ask for," end quote. DMA and Nintendo kept making attempts to turn Body Harvest into an RPG. This time, DMA went out to Nintendo HQ in a last-ditch effort to get it done. Some of the team were flown out to Kyoto first class to meet Nintendo and work with them. Nintendo knew what they wanted, but they just weren't getting it. For the next 2 weeks, DMA devs worked next door to the Star Fox team, or in the UK, the game known as Lilat Wars. DMA also got to meet gaming legend Shigeru Miyamoto, who was drafted in to give his insights. As Hammond tells it, it was actually a surprise meeting and they didn't know Miyamoto would be there. "When we were told of the visit," he says, "the only information I recall being told was that we should be well dressed." One of the managers of DMA actually handed out a prize for whoever had the most improved appearance, and Hammond won. The prize was a Kit Kat. In any case, Miyamoto was in the design department for just minutes and never spoke a word. Maybe he saw Body Harvest and thought it was a lost cause. By now, Adam Drake was locked in as the protagonist, but Nintendo didn't like him. For starters, he was just a sprite. But DMA then saw Rare's Blast Cores in action, and in particular its fully 3D main character, and realised with horror, sprites wouldn't cut it. This was going to be difficult. Nintendo also gave the DMA artists notes. One of them was to make the graphics, quote, more material, something the team just couldn't get right. There was definitely a language barrier in place. One of the biggest additions Nintendo of Japan mandated was time travel. The B-movie 1950 vibes were therefore ditched, much to the sadness of DMA, but hey, Nintendo was pulling the purse strings. Story-wise, Nintendo wanted a time travel concept, and that idea had now taken hold. Instead of the player just going to different locations to fend off alien threats, they're now also going to different time periods, with the last one being set in the future. It had started to get convoluted. Now DMA had to think of ways to get the player into these future time periods that made sense without becoming either a cliche or a time paradox. A pretty tall ask. At Nintendo's request, DMA scriptwriters sent over the new one-page plot summary. Apparently, Nintendo of America said they wanted it more detailed. Nintendo of Japan, on the other hand, said they wanted it to be more simplified. The conflicting feedback meant Body Harvest was rapidly becoming a case of too many cooks. It continued in this vein for a while. Over at Nintendo of Japan, they now wanted Adam Drake to be a secret agent, with the backing of a secret organization from the future. Not only that, Adam also apparently didn't look enough like a secret agent. Nintendo wanted him to wear a dinner jacket. Originally, DMA's pitch was an edgy, humorous game. Neither the US nor Japan got it, and not only did this conflict with the US sensibilities, it also conflicted with the Japanese ones simultaneously. The tone was sanded down, the humour stripped out, and the game left directionless. Nintendo was not pleased and dropped the project after 3 years. Development on Body Harvest was to continue, however. The game was finished independently, and DMA was then left to find a publisher. On April 17, 1998, IGN posted a news story on the publishing problems. Quote, "The unique title was originally scheduled to be published by Nintendo, but inside sources suggest DMA and the Big N disagreed on the direction the game should take. Nintendo wanted the development team to incorporate RPG elements into Body Harvest, whereas DMA was banking on the game's action emphasis," end quote. And that pretty much sums it up. Having been developed under a publishing agreement with Nintendo as an N64 launch title, the agreement eventually fell apart and led to 2 other companies publishing the game instead. Gremlin Interactive bought DMA Design and released Body Harvest in Europe, while Midway picked it up for America. Unfortunately, it released right in between Rare's Banjo-Kazooie and Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, getting well and truly lost in the shuffle. So where does GTA come in all this? Well, in 1995, as Body Harvest was about to get dragged through development hell, DMA was working on another project, Race and Chase. This was the working title of a cops and robbers game for the PC, which would later become known as Grand Theft Auto. Its original design pitch from 1995 has even been uploaded on the internet. The aim of Race and Chase, it said, fast multiplayer car racing game and crashing game using a novel graphics method. Set in present-day America, Race and Chase wasn't a well-formed idea yet, but the essential building blocks of GTA were there. There was one compelling motive for the Scottish-based developer to set their game in the United States. For technical reasons, all of the roads had to be at right angles. However, the graphics were dated even for 1997 when the game launched under the name GTA. GTA 2 came 2 years later in 1999, and despite positive reviews, it was the same story. People both inside and outside DMA said the graphics were too primitive. Within DMA, there was now a split forming. There were two projects going on. The first was GTA 2.5, where the original GTA team was taking the GTA engine, making it 3D and setting the game in 1980s Miami. This was 5 years before 2002's GTA Vice City. The second project at DMA was GTA 3. However, this was being developed not by the GTA team, but by the team who had previously worked on Body Harvest. The location was not Dundee, but in DMA's new office based in Edinburgh. Thus, the split was getting bigger. Both the new technology from Body Harvest and DMA's geographical split had caused an inter-team rivalry. The Body Harvest team in the Edinburgh office were being favoured with what became the real Grand Theft Auto sequel. DMA software engineer Keith Hamilton says there was quite a bit of bad blood between the two teams. It was a slightly acrimonious split, says Hamilton. We were annoyed that the game had been given to this other team, most of whom had nothing to do with the first two versions of GTA. Within a couple of years, DMA's Edinburgh office had been renamed Rockstar North. The original DMA, located, as I said, in Dundee, the ones that had created the first GTA, not to mention Lemmings, of course, had been frozen out, either intentionally or otherwise. Most of them left the company under a cloud of disillusionment as GTA started rapidly becoming a phenomenon. And what about the abandoned project, the GTA 2.5, set in 1980s Miami? It bared quite a bit of resemblance to GTA 3's follow-up, GTA Vice City, despite the originators of that project having nothing to do with Vice City. They, of course, didn't get any credits. They did find success, however, after leaving DMA. David Jones took a few of the original GTA team to his new studio, Real Time Worlds. Its first game was a fair few years in the making, and it's one you've probably heard of, an urban sandbox game called Crackdown. Launching on the Xbox 360 in 2007, Hamilton calls it the real sequel to GTA 2. As for Body Harvest, there was never a direct sequel, but there was a concept for one. An interview given in 1998 for Prima's official strategy guide for the game, written by Simon Hill, he asked the question, is there going to be a Body Harvest sequel? Is there anything you can reveal about the next DMA game? A sequel is in the conceptual stages, said the unnamed developer, if there's enough demand. In particular, they continued, there was lots we wanted to refine better, RPG elements and a decent interior room engine, and also the addition of speech. But also they say, we had to stop somewhere. I guess going on to create the biggest video game series of all time isn't a bad consolation prize. So that was the story of Body Harvest and how it laid the foundation for GTA. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, do hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of classic video games right here on this channel.